Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics to help bridge the gap that exists between what we know and what we do in early childhood education. We're starting conversations with academics, authors, decision makers, educators, and parents so that together we can improve the quality of early childhood education, while at the same time protecting and respecting the childhood experience. If you've listened to many episodes here at Not Just Cute, it's likely you've already met Pica. Ray is a force. As a speaker, consultant, and the author of over 20 books, in addition to articles in many popular publications, Pica has been an outspoken voice for children and childhood for more than 4 decades. Constant in that career has been her passion for protecting childhood and calling others to action. In this episode, she's talking with me about her newest book on advocating for children and for the early childhood profession. She's also giving us a peek into her writing process. Before we jump in, a quick reminder that this is a fantastic time to prepare your Why We Play letters for the new year. These letters will help you jumpstart important conversations in your learning community about the importance and power of play in your early childhood setting. People don't value what they don't understand. If you want to help parents and colleagues understand the value of play, the Why We Play letters were created just for you. Learn more and grab a free sample letter at notjustcute.com/whyweplay. Pica is always a joy to catch up with. You can find this episode's show notes, which will be full of links and tidbits related to this episode, at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 55. Whether you've been wondering about speaking up in your educational community or about taking your message to a wider audience in book form, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Good morning, Ray. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Amanda?
I am doing well. I'm so glad that you wrote another book so that we could have another conversation. That was really thoughtful of you.
Oh, well, I did it just for you.
That's the only way we can get together.
Oh, it shouldn't be that way, though, should it?
It shouldn't. No, we should just set up more conversations.
Yeah.
No, right. I feel like I ask this every time. Do you know how many you've written now? How many books you've written over your career?
Okay, so this one will be the 22nd.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And I want to talk a little bit later about that process. And you're such a prolific writer, but we'll save that. I'm going to put a thumbtack right there. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
So 22 books. How is this one different?
Oh, well, it's a completely different topic for me. For one thing, people don't associate me with advocacy, but I've just gotten so ticked off by everything that's happening in the early childhood field. It's insane and it's wrong. The children are suffering, the teachers are suffering, the field is suffering, and I would like to help put an end to it. It's sometimes I do feel like Sisyphus pushing that boulder up. Only to have it rolled back down again, but darn it, I keep trying.
Well, and it's interesting that you said people don't associate you with advocacy, because I do, but I think that it's partly because some of the best advocacy comes from having good information. And I say over and over that we need good information and good people to come together. And if we can get more good people, that good information, then they come on board and advocate with us. So I think you've been doing advocacy your entire career as you get good information to people.
I love that you think of me that way and that you think of advocacy that way. I am always spouting off about some things. I suppose it doesn't come as a total surprise that this book is about sparking a revolution. It's time for the revolution. I'm tired of waiting for it.
And that's the title of your book. I haven't mentioned that yet. Spark a Revolution in Early Education. Yes. And so tell me a little bit about that shift. So you've done books before that are very much similar information, right? You've constantly been sharing that information of here's what children really need. And what if, right? What if we understood what children really needed? So how have you approached that shift of it's not enough just to know, let's intentionally spark a revolution. Let's really advocate. What does that look like for you in this process?
Yeah, the subtitle is Speaking Up for Ourselves and the Children,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel as though educators in general, but early childhood educators in particular, have not had a voice. Social media is giving them more voice than they used to have, but you know, they're early childhood people are the loving ones. They're the ones who like to hug, and they don't see themselves, donning armor and battling the forces of evil. Um, so I want to help them, and let me back up just a moment, because it's not about donning armor and battling the forces of evil. That sounds a little intimidating, and the
Mm-hmm.
word advocacy can be very intimidating. No, it's about taking whatever steps you can in small and large ways, medium ways, in loud and quiet ways, because it all adds up. It
Mm-hmm.
all adds up, and there are more of us than them. So, yeah, I mean, I have been known recently for debunking myths,
Mm-hmm.
and the first part of the book is about the 4 myths that I consider most harmful to early childhood. Earlier is better.
Mm-hmm.
Children learn by sitting. Digital devices are important to learning, and playtime is not productive time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you want to fight back against a myth, you have to provide the facts. You have to replace the myth with facts in people's minds. So that's what I'm doing in the first section of the book. Whether they're used as talking points or for other people to write about, or, for letters to editors and policymakers, whatever it might be. So I'm giving them that. I need to find a better word than ammunition. I really hate that word. But you know what I mean.
Right.
And
The
then,
content, the context for it, really, content and
yeah,
context there.
yeah. The second part is, advocacy basics, how it can be easier than we think. And then what are the ABCs of advocacy? Things like, keep it brief, be respectful, just some common sense stuff. And section 3 is speaking up. First, getting parents on our side, because I really think that that bottom-up approach can be very, very, very important, very
Mm-hmm.
successful. And then the second chapter in that section is speaking up with administrators and policymakers. So, tips for doing that, because it's scary.
It can be scary for sure.
Yeah.
And I do think, as I have worked with different groups and talked, that's one of the things that we've talked about is if we can't explain to other people why we do what we do, no one else will do it for us. And when I hear these terrible stories of, people coming in and taking away the block area because we don't have time for that, or we need to get rid of the dress up area because we need these computers in here, those types of things, those are really, really sad stories. And at the same time, I think, so what do we do? Are we ready to say, here's why you can't do that? And I recognize that some people may have already tried that, and that I'm not placing blame, but I'm saying
Oh,
in those situations, are we ready? Are we ready to say, let me tell you, let me show you why we do what we do. Let me tell you and let me show you why this matters. And
yes.
that these aren't just cute, fluffy things, but that these are really the tools of our work. So what are some of those simple ways? You gave some tips on how to do it, but what do you think are some ways that early educators are advocating that maybe they don't even realize yet how important those simple things are?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of things that I talk about are, use your words, which is something we say to children, and the importance of language. If we all refer to ourselves as early childhood professionals or educators or teachers, rather than, oh, I'm just anything, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a daycare worker. It's childcare. It's not daycare. No one's taking care of days. We can't feed into that belief that people have, that early childhood professionals are just babysitters,
Mm-hmm.
who just play all day, heaven forbid. Uh, you know, wipe noses and bottoms and whatever else they've got in their minds. So that's the second part is, use our words and tell our stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think that any time an early childhood professional speaks with passion about what he or she is doing, it makes a difference. I think that maybe at a social event, when somebody says, "What do you do for a living?" an early childhood professional might use that just word. "Oh, I'm just a preschool teacher." Maybe they themselves feel it's less than the lawyer in attendance, or whoever it might be. We have to speak with pride and joy and passion, and talk about why we get into the field, or maybe some success story that we've had with a child who was shy, or who didn't want to read, or whatever it is, something that we did that made a difference. And people will begin to understand that they do make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so important. I'm always blabbing at people. If I find out an Uber driver is a parent, I start on my spiel, and I mean, it's not a spiel. I start talking to them about early childhood. I was on hold one day with technical whatever, tech support for something, and while we were waiting, I heard a little girl in the background. It turned out she had a 4-year-old, and we started talking about her preschool. So we do that, and the more that we show passion, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
the more that we show our expertise,
Mm-hmm.
because we have expertise, then the more respect we're going to get. So simple things like that. And, then there are ways to share information with parents. A lot of times they might feel, "Oh, I don't want the parents to think I'm a know-it-all, or I know their children better than they do." There are simple ways to share it. And just, if you come across an article, do it with
Mm-hmm.
enthusiasm. "Oh, look, I came across this great article. I thought you might like to read it too." I mean, apps
Mm-hmm.
make it possible to share all kinds of things these days with parents. So you put it in the weekly email or the weekly newsletter, and you put those photos of children joyously playing on your website, and blah 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 blah.
And they see it. And I love that you use the word passion, because I think that is a lot of it, that when we share our passion, and when we, like you said, share that information, because it represents so much of what we do, and we share those pictures because we're passionate about the play and what's happening, that when we share that with other people, that it's contagious. It really is. And I think what I say all the time, people don't value what they don't understand. And when we bring them along to understand with us what we're doing and why we do it, they value it more, and they become passionate, and they begin to advocate alongside us. And I've seen that myself, even in the work that I do now. I've come across people that will ask about the work that I do. And I've literally had people respond, preschool teachers do professional development. Like, there are conferences for preschool teachers. And I thought,
Really?
okay, let's not take that personally. But as I've shared with people what I do and how much I love, working with early educators, and why this work is important. And it's interesting to see people who maybe before didn't quite understand what that work was about, what that field was about. People in my life who now they'll share articles with me. "Oh, I thought that you might find this interesting because it's what you've talked about." So they're right on board with, "Oh, I get it now. I see the spark. And
Love that.
I thought you might find this interesting." And I just think that when you share that passion, that it brings people along with you. And when you can open their eyes to understand, things just start to click, and those advocates just start to just line right up with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that none of us really knows what's involved in somebody else's work.
Mm-hmm.
We might think, "Oh, I know what an accountant does," or whatever. But we don't know on a day-to-day basis everything that's involved. And they certainly don't know what's involved in early childhood education. And as you mentioned, getting those advocates on our side, that's why I think that bottom-up approach with parents is so important, because there are so many of them,
Mm-hmm.
and there is strength in numbers. So we help them understand that this is more than just some place to drop your child off. We show them what child development is about, and brain development, and and that it is not about flashcards and lapware.
Right. And I think we can't, I think sometimes in the profession, we underestimate that how much parents rely on us for that information, that while there may be some parents who do come in with an attitude of, I'm just going to drop them off. There are many parents who are trying to figure this out. And this is the first 3-year-old they've had to figure this out with, or the first 4-year-old they've tried to figure out 4 years old with. And I think most parents I've come in contact with are so grateful for these early educators who can say, oh, I've seen lots of 3-year-olds. I've seen lots of 4-year-olds, and I've studied child development. And here are things that I know. And, of course, coming from a place of teamwork, not being condescending at all, but I just
Right.
think that there are so many parents who do look to early childhood professionals as professionals and as the number one resource that they go to try to understand their children and the developmental process. And so I think that for teachers to recognize, like you said, that we are professionals and we do, I think it can be intimidating for some professionals when they realize that parents are looking to them. But I think when we embrace that and realize you are a professional, you are prepared for this, and that these parents, rather than seeing, I don't want to bother them with another article, I don't want to bother them with more information, to realize that they are so grateful to have someone help them in this process, and for you to share that wealth of experience and understanding that you have with them is such a gift. And it's part of our profession, is to educate those parents.
Yes, I agree. And like you said, it's, if it's their first 3-year-old, the whole thing is a mystery, and we have to remember that today's parents are getting, and that's where all the myths come in, so much misinformation. They absolutely want the best for their children, but they're being told that this thing over here is the best, when it isn't necessarily. The early academics and the early athletics, that myth that earlier is better. That if they're afraid, because there's no easier group to scare than parents, that if they don't get their children started as soon as possible, they'll be left behind forever and ever.
Right.
And so we have to replace that misinformation. I mean, the media doesn't help, and social media makes it worse. So if we can help them understand what really is right for their children, then that would be great.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm curious, as you've been sharing this message for years and years, and there have been a lot of challenges that have, like you mentioned, social media has changed the landscape. There are a lot of added challenges and just new ways that challenges have presented themselves. And I think it's easy for us to count out here all the ways that it's become more challenging, or how children, our culture maybe is moving further and further away from what we know is best for children. But I'm curious, are there ways where you have seen progress being made over the years in your profession and in your role as an advocate? Do you see any bright spots where maybe we have made progress in this area?
I was afraid you'd ask that. I think that more people, more educators are willing to speak up. Maybe not enough of them yet, but I think that they're less willing. A colleague said to me a long time ago, for too long, teachers have been told to shut up and do their jobs, and for too long, they've complied. And I know that sometimes, they have to comply. They have to earn a living, feed their family. But I find that there are more and more of them who are fighting back. And that, I think, is definitely the only bright spot I can think of.
I feel like as well, though, there is, in addition to that, and maybe that's part of why I feel like we have more science on our side than ever before.
Oh,
I think is another one I would add to that.
Yes. I get discouraged, though, because we have so much research, and other countries are using all of our wonderful research, and it feels as though we keep ignoring it here in this country, and that we don't look to other nations. We don't look outside of our borders for answers when they're right there. But yes, I mean, we do have, as William Doyle, co-author, or maybe it was Posse Selberg. They're both authors of Let the Children Play.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to a summit that they were speaking on, and they said the other side doesn't have the research. So you make a
Right.
good point. Yeah.
Right. I think that's encouraging. And I think when it comes to, like you said, having the confidence to speak out, for me, that is where a lot of that confidence comes from. That, like you
Sure.
said, this is where the research is. And I think because of that, I feel like, and maybe it's wishful thinking, I feel like there is a little bit more momentum, more of a groundswell that, because you can just present that data and people, I feel it's easier to get people on board with those conversations when they see the data and they are, I remember coming to I was doing a training and they had a parent education night the night before. And I had kind of been given a heads up. One of the directors said, there's a parent who's pretty skeptical, and I give her full permission for that. She said she was just a little hesitant because, this is an online person, and she, I think rightly so, said, well, but what are, what's the background? What are the resources? I think there are a lot. I think that's fully fair. There are a lot of online resources, a lot of social media things, and the roots don't go very deep. Right.
Right.
So I'd already had a heads up and then talked to this parent. Long story short, she was a very intelligent, very deep thinking parent who was very conscious about what kind of information she was bringing in. So to the director's eyes, she's like, heads up. She may challenge you. She may push you. And she didn't. Our conversation that night was so rooted in the research, because that's where it is. And that's what I do. And it was so great to talk with her afterwards and just see in her eyes that that's what she was looking for. I want research. I want citations. I want to see what this really means. And she was fully on board because she could see the data.
Yeah, I love that. And for others, you said we have to tell them and we have to show them. For others, they need to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a woman I know who taught kindergarten for 40 years, and she's retired now. And she was doing it the wonderful old-fashioned way for many years, with the blocks and the housekeeping center and all of those good things. And then new administration came in and handed them, and the young people aren't going to know what the heck I'm talking about when I say ditto sheets, but worksheets, essentially, handed packet after packet after packet to the teachers and said that they would be using that. And this wonderful woman said, and this story is in the book, I will use one of them if you will allow me to show you that my methods work. She had an open door policy. Parents, administrators could come see what she was doing. And the important thing was she was able to explain what she was doing. I say that all the time. You need to, not only if somebody says, why are you doing this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to say, well, this addresses word comprehension, which falls under such and such standard. Mm-hmm. It's really, really important to link it to a content area, and if possible, to a standard. And the administration saw that it worked, and she was allowed to keep doing,
mm-hmm.
Things the right way. Yeah. So if we can show them, then there's a wonderful story, got to be out of New Zealand because it involves Kiwis, but a preschool teacher had a parent night, and she took half of the group, left them in the classroom with drawing of Kiwis, a coloring sheet, and brown and green crayons. Mm-hmm. And she took the other half of the parents out to the hall where there was a kiwi tree, and they could touch the kiwi and taste it and smell it, and use all of those senses to experience it. And obviously they understood kiwis better than the ones who were just drawing on a worksheet. So
I love it.
So we need to tell them, we need to show them.
Mm-hmm. And when we do that, we, there are going to be those ripple effects of that, yes. That if one teacher takes the time to share and show and help an administrator understand, then that administrator then has a new perspective when it comes to the other teachers in the program, the other people that come behind. I know when one of my boys was in kindergarten, and I told during a parent teacher conference, told the teacher, thank you so much for still making time for play in kindergarten. I know, just recognizing there can be a lot of pressure, wanted to make sure she knew I appreciated that. And she said, thank our superintendent. She told us to make sure we do. And I just thought,
ooh, I just got goosebumps.
That's the best, right? When you can get that message to the superintendent, when you start a conversation in your learning community and you just keep that conversation going, when you share and you show, the ripple effects of that can go beyond your own classroom.
Oh, absolutely. I liken it to the drip in the sink, where it just drip, 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 drip. And then eventually it fills the sink and then it overflows and it floods the whole darn house,
Right?
So yes, it makes a difference. Every little thing we do makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, through your book, as you call it Raise Revolution, right? Part of this revolution. I love the alliteration.
I love alliteration.
So in Raise Revolution, you have tips in this book, Spark a Revolution. But you also have other ways to support people who are interested in, they've got the book, they've read it, they want more support as they build this advocacy. What other things do you have to offer to help with that process?
A membership program, and actually anyone who joins gets a free digital copy of the book.
Oh, wonderful.
So I've created a membership program that just expands on the information in the book and offers action steps and support with a Facebook page, a private Facebook page, and just all kinds of things that I can think of to include in this to make it easier for people to spark a revolution. Oh, it's called Spark a Revolution, a League of Champions.
Love it. And especially for those who do feel that maybe they are an island in their learning community, what a wonderful way for them to have other people to bounce ideas off and other support to not feel so alone in that movement.
Yes. I mean, that's especially true, if you're in a rural community or somewhere where you don't, or, you're like me and you don't get out much. Yes. I mean, I complain about technology a lot, but it offers these kinds of opportunities and I'm very grateful for it.
That is wonderful. Now, one of the things I mentioned I wanted to circle back to is just, again, that you're such a prolific writer. You've written so many books. So I wanted to talk about that for just a few minutes. First off, just how do you know when an idea is ready for a book? What are for you? And I know that's different for other people, but I'm curious, just a little peek around the corner of that process for you. How do you know this one's a book? It's time to write a book. What does that feel like or look like for you?
Well, you call me a prolific writer and I say I have a writing disease, which on occasion goes into remission, but comes back. It's funny. I get the tingles. I get the tingles. This particular one, I was doing a virtual keynote, and one of the things I love about the virtual presentations is that I feel like people are more inclined to ask questions and have discussion with you at the end. Whereas if you're on a stage, maybe not so much from the audience. Anyway, we were talking about speaking up, and I don't think I used the word spark a revolution, but I think I said something about speaking up for ourselves and the little ones, which Red Leaf changed to the children, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. And someone said, "Oh, there's your next book." And I got the tingles. I don't know. I just knew. And I was approached recently, and I'm reluctant to say it because nothing has happened yet because I can't seem to find the time to put this proposal together. But I was approached by another publisher to write a book about a certain subject that I didn't feel I could do justice to. And I told her I'd percolate on it. And then one day I saw the angle for it in my head. And I told her, right now I don't have the tingles. When I think about, putting together a proposal for you, I feel overwhelmed, not tingly. Mm-hmm. And so I sent her an email and I said, the tingles are here. And so, yeah, there might be book 23 on the way.
So for you, it just gets to the point that you can't not write about it.
Yes. I can't not write about it. I do love to write. Mm-hmm. I really love to write. And it's in my genetic makeup. My mother's side of the family had writers. And mm-hmm. her uncle was actually a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. So yeah, you can't ignore those genes.
Yeah.
up on you.
So for many people, I think that whole process, and I will include myself in that. I'm somebody who toys with the writing, and like I've mentioned to you before, pull it out and then put it on the back burner. And I think for people who have never written a fully published book before, that process can feel a little mystical. You mentioned the proposal process before you write the book and all of those things. I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit about how you came to understand that process yourself. I know that would be much longer, but just kind of briefly, what did it take for you to get your head around the process of publishing a book? How that's changed over the years for you to understand the process. And then a little bit, I know you've started to help others to understand and navigate that process. If you could understand maybe what it looked like for you and how you've now turned that experience to helping others.
Well, I don't remember that far back, Amanda.
Well, and it's changed since your first book and now, I'm sure.
Well, okay. So the biggest change is that when I submitted a manuscript before and it got edited and came back, I had to type it all over again. I mean, I am old. I've been doing this for 42 years. So yeah, that's the biggest change. And that's one way I'm very grateful to technology, with the cut and paste and all of that. One of my first experiences was I was at an AUIC conference one year and going through the exhibit hall, and I stopped at what was the Delmar booth, and now there's Cengage. The textbook companies gobble each other up. And this guy asked me what I do, and I told him, and he said, would you be interested in writing a textbook about movement? And I said, yes. I mean, because I've wanted to be a writer since I was a little girl. Mm-hmm. So of course I said yes. And then I tell the story to my writing group that after I did sign the contract, I hyperventilated for 3 weeks. I could not take a deep breath. I was scared out of my mind. And the one good thing that editor did, we didn't get along very well, was tell me little bites, Ray, little bites. So you can't think about writing a book, let alone a textbook, without, wanting to throw yourself off a roof. You have to think, I'm going to start a section of a chapter today, mm-hmm. But I still, to this day, Amanda, whether I'm creating a new online course or, the membership program or starting another book, starting is hard. I have anxiety, and the only thing that relieves it is actually starting. So yeah, when you talk about the process and the proposal and all of that, it's interesting because it's become so second nature for me. I mean, I wouldn't know how to get so many other things done, but I know how to get a book published. That it sometimes comes as a surprise that other people don't know mm-hmm. what that process is. And so we do, that's part of my become an early childhood author. It's a cohort-based masterclass that I've done 2 cohorts so far. I'll open it up again, excuse me, in January mm-hmm. for cohort 3. And, we go through all of those steps, and I want to give other early childhood professionals that voice,
mm-hmm. It circles back, doesn't it?
Yeah. I love it. I just absolutely love it. We meet every other week and online, and it's just so, it feeds me, as much as I hope it feeds them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. Well, I will make sure that we share these links and resources for people to find all these amazing things that you're putting out into the world. You're such an amazing resource, an amazing advocate, an amazing, just all that you share for professionals and for the little ones, for the children.
The little ones. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Ray, for all that you do and for taking this time to share what is new for you right now. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon about the next new thing.
Thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. And you've brought tears to my eyes now, so you made me cry.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 55. There, you'll find links to the books and courses we discussed today, as well as other fascinating tidbits I know you'll love. You can also hit up the show notes for a link to the Why We Play letters. Head to notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 55, or go straight to notjustcute.com/whyweplay to get signed up and download your free sample letter. The Why We Play letters will help you start conversations and advocate for developmentally appropriate, play-based early education. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more on my blog and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter at notjustcute.com. You can also stay tuned for social media updates on Instagram by following me at Amanda_NotJustCute. Thanks for listening today, and as always, thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.